Well, the next 10 minutes or so, I will be starting the Recover Yourself workshop. This is going to be going out live so that you can get an idea of what the Recover Yourself workshop will entail. It will go on for about an hour, and it will, 50 minutes or so. And it will entail the first portion of the Recover Yourself workshop. In order to get the full benefit of the Recover Yourself workshop, I would suggest each and every one of you join me for a full workshop. I'm going to give you in this live and in this workshop, I'm going to give you the foundation of what the Recover Yourself workshop entails. Although we are not going to be going through the important steps of getting to the concept within yourself. That is stuff that you can get by attending my workshop. And the reason that I don't do that live in this way is because I can't be as interactive. When you are here with me on Zoom, I have more access to be able to, answer your questions and make sure that you are on the same page as I am. I recently heard a speaker talking about the difference between values and standards. And he was not cognizant, or he wasn't aware of the fact that people define things differently. And so it's great when you are here with me on Zoom and we can have a communication, we can talk in a way that is communicative, right? Like if you hear a word that I use and that's triggering, I want to be able to get you off of that trigger, and I want to make sure that you are with me on the journey of this recovering yourself idea, because without you being with me, without me being with you, without us being together, you can go off on your own in terms of like verbiage and things. We have to recognize that we all perceive things slightly differently. And if we utilize words like faith or addiction or recovery, well, the definitions that we each hold are going to be a little different. And so what would be best, if you are intrigued by the work that you see here and the ideas that are presented here, I would encourage each and every one of you to join me on a Recover Yourself workshop so we can talk and we can communicate. It's much easier that way. Right now, I don't have a team behind me making sure that you're all on the same page, or if you have questions, they get addressed. I want to make sure that that all takes place. And so the best way to do that is to join me on a Recover Yourself workshop. So once again, we'll be starting in less than 10 minutes, but until then, I want you guys to just possibly be quiet, get ready to move into this stage of your day. One thing that I like to do in my day is segment intend, which just means I want to intend for things to happen during a segment of my day. It's not special. There's nothing to it. It's just a simple intention. It doesn't have to be special of any kind. It can just be like, hey, I want to be present and I want to be heard. Right? That's what my intention is going to be for this workshop. So I want to be, I'm going to write it down, because writing things down is really great. It's a great little exercise. So I will be present. I will be heard and understood. Just by putting that down, right? Just by writing, I will be present, I will be heard and understood. That will allow me to let go of a lot of like disparate thoughts about if I'm being heard, if I'm being understood, if what I'm saying is enough, or if I have to repeat myself. Many times when we get in a situation where we're talking, we say like and repeat ourselves over and over again. but just the fact that I can sit down and I can make the intention of being heard and being understood before I move into this puts me in a position of being acceptant of the fact that those things are going to happen. So it's a wonderful little exercise that I do. I also fill out a list. Another little exercise I do is fill out a list of things that I do during the day. And I'm honest with myself. So if I'm putzing around during a part of my day and looking at YouTube, or I'm trying to do my Spanish lessons, but I'm distracted. I write it down, not distracted, but doing Spanish. It gives me the opportunity at the end of the day to look back at the 16 hours of my day or whatever it was, and examine where did I not act in a way that was how I wanted to, or how I would like to in the future. I spoke to my nephew not long ago about the idea of what is it you practice? Are you practicing to be a good boy or whatever, right? Are you practicing something that you don't want to do, right? Are you practicing being something that you don't want to be? We every day we're practicing something, right? We're either practicing doing things we've always done or practicing doing new things. Either way, whatever it is we practice is ultimately going to be what we become. And when I get to go back at the end of my day and look at all of the things that I was practicing, it's great for me to say, oh, I don't necessarily want to practice that thing. And so this is all a part of what we talk about when we say recover yourself. We want to recover our whole selves and the selves of us that we want to be, the things that we're drawn to be. Of course, it's easier to check out. It's easier to pacify. It's easier to be comfortable. But life isn't always comfortable, and it's not always great to check out, and it's not always great to not check out. Sometimes you need to check out. Sometimes you need to just veg out, right? But vegging out also needs boundaries, because many of us know, especially during a pandemic, vegging out could get out of control. And if we're out of control, well, we're not making choices for ourselves. We may be not making choices for what we want to be doing in the direction that we want to go. We may not be practicing that which we want to be doing. And so that's what this workshop is going to help you start to bring in more awareness. This workshop is going to help you grow. This workshop is going to help you be you and get out from under the influence of things that are not you. And that's huge, because when we can have you out there being you, we can really heal a lot of people, a lot of things, society, culture, all of that. We'll be able to reach into that. So I'm gonna take a minute. My cat is asking me to get out of the room, so I'm gonna go ahead and let her out. And so we'll be starting shortly. Okay, we're just about on time. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me on this Recover Yourself workshop. I am so excited to have you here. It is my pleasure to offer you some information and some insight today around what it means to recover yourself. If you are here for the actual workshop, there are going to be 3 polls within the first hour. I'm not actually going to be releasing polls because nobody is present on my Zoom call. But if you were here, you'd be getting three polls, and the polls are simply to gauge where you're at, so that I can adjust my my talking to points about where you're at. The other thing it's about is attendance. For those of you who are professionals and are looking to earn CEUs for this workshop, filling out those 3 polls is going to be the thing that I can show NADAC or IADAPCO or the Indiana State Licensing Board that you were here. Because although it is my word, and they'll never call, they don't, I'm sure they don't care, but it is a way for me to dictate, hey, who was here, who was not. Once again, those will not be public. I'm the only one that's going to know the answers, but when they go to, but they will be used, and so there will be a record of that existing, right? I am open to keeping those private, like that's not the question, but the fact that you answered questions will be available. So when you say, will they be anonymous? No, but I am not giving anybody that information. I am going to see your answer, and I will also know that you were here. And so that's really the reason. None of these are so personal. Some of them can be deemed as personal, can seem personal, because I might ask you about where your challenges are. But it's not anything that's going to be used against you. I'm not going to give it to your boss or NADAC or anybody like that. It's just for me to say NADAC, tell NADAC or IADAPCA or whoever you're going to be getting your CEUs from that you were here. Okay, that's just some housework stuff. You guys, this is virtual, so I don't need to tell you where the bathroom is. My hope is that you know. So many of you are professionals. I'm really hoping that some of you have heard about this workshop and are excited about this workshop. If you do know what to expect, I'm really glad. You probably are expecting something, like to go really deep. And that is the point today. The point is to go deep on a Tuesday. And the first hour, we're going to talk about how deep that can go, and the places where we fool ourselves, and the places where we're not being aware of who we are and what we're doing. So if you are here on the workshop, in which nobody is at the moment, but if you were here at the workshop, sharing is something that I want to encourage. Even if you work with, even if you are on a call with someone that you work with, I do want to encourage you to share. Sharing always makes the experience a little bit more personal, as well as more effective. Now, having said that, if you feel that sharing would be a threat to you or someone else, I want you to not share. I want you to take it upon yourself to know what is right for your mental health and yourself and your career and the work that you're doing. So that's very important to me, and it is going to be very important to the group as well. Because if you are sharing from a space of vulnerability, but you are not comfortable with that, that's not going to create a good space, and it could create a very, very triggering atmosphere for yourself as well as other people. And triggers is something that we're going to be talking quite a bit about today. So we all face burnout and fatigue. I don't care if you're a professional or you're a parent or you're just a regular Joe out there working your job. Burnout and fatigue is something that we are facing more so now than ever. We're facing burnout of entertainment. We're facing burnout of stuff. We're facing burnout towards, like, the planet is facing burnout, literally. And it's important that we understand that burnout comes from, often comes from emotional investment, right? Overly emotionally investing in a situation that we can't do anything about, or that doesn't really mean as much to us as we would like to think it does. And when that's the case, what is this? Give me 1 second. I don't know what this is. Oh, maybe it's something. Yeah, my bad. All right. moving on. I had something over my camera, and I didn't know what it was. So overly investing emotionally into a situation is going to get us continually, going to put us in a state of continual fatigue and going to put us in a state of burnout, because we can't be emotionally investing in things, especially when they're invested in people outside of ourselves. When we are emotionally invested in our lives, that's one thing. When we are emotionally invested in the lives of others, we are going to experience burnout and fatigue, because that emotional investment is going to constantly come up. And we often get emotionally invested in the lives of others because we put ourselves in a situation where their actions trigger us, right? We see their actions, and those actions trigger us to fear, to experience anger, and all sorts of things. And we're going to get into that throughout the workshop. But suffice it to say, when we are facing burnout, it's often because we are overly emotionally invested. And the world wants us to be overly emotionally invested in things. Why? Because it gets us to try and solve problems that don't exist. We'll continue into that throughout the workshop. So this first hour is going to be an overview of that, of overly getting emotionally invested and how we get emotionally invested and why. And we are also going to talk about how we avoid being aware, how we get our triggers, and all the sorts of things. And so we're going to give you a foundation of the root of burnout and fatigue. After that, we are going to go into, if you are on the call, we are going to go into the different stages and the different steps that you as an individual can take multiple times a day to get your mind back home, right? Back to you, back to what's important. Get your mind to a place where you are not overly emotionally invested in your surroundings, in the outcomes that you are experiencing around you. When we finish, anybody that's here looking for CEUs will get an email with their CEUs, and you will also be invited to a follow-up call. So the follow-up calls are all about talking about what came up today. What's going to come up today is going to be triggering. What comes up today is going to be painful for some. I had one person at the end of the entirety of the workshop, she stood up and she said, I had no idea how missing the execution of my brother hurt and continues to hurt me. She wasn't able to be there because her parents didn't want her to go, but that made her feel a certain way. And then every interaction that she had in her life revolved around this deep trigger that happened to her when she was young. Now, I only mention that because that's a big deal, right? Like having to face that. So I'm not saying that you're going to go into anything that's deep, that is that deep, or that is that triggering, or that is that painful, but she did it with an open heart. So she wasn't hurt. It didn't hurt her. So if you're feeling like, oh my God, this is dangerous for her to have gone through this, no, it was done with love, and it was done with an open heart, and she accepted it, and she looked at it, and she was so grateful. Yes, she cried, but she was happy about seeing this, which she was avoiding being aware of for so long. So follow-up calls are great. I offer a follow-up call to anyone that's gone through this so that we can talk through all of that which comes up. 30 minutes, it's not a lot, but it's plenty to help you to hear what you have to say and to put it together for you so that you can move forward and continue recovering yourself. This isn't about me holding your hand. This isn't about therapeutics. This is about you understanding your strength and that which you can offer yourself as well as the world. So in this workshop, you are going to find things, if you're a professional, for your practice. You're going to find things also for your life. And you're going to be able to engage these things in the people and lives of those around you. So this concept and this work that we're going to do today is very much focused on giving you techniques and ideas so that you can continue to recover yourself. And that is a huge gift. And I hope if you have any questions or thoughts, you can reach out to me directly. You can check out my website, MartinJon, MartinJon Garcia. Nope, MartinJon.com. My name is MartinJon Garcia. So my website is MartinJon, MartinJon.com. And you can find me pretty much anywhere. If you just search MartinJon spelled in that way with one word, MartinJon, you can find me. Please reach out. Let me know. If you are on YouTube, please let me know in the comments and I will definitely come back and check you out. Pardon me. So we've all given up parts of ourselves. From the moment we are born, we start to live under the influence of those around us, right? So when we are rewarded for something, we learn that, oh, I'm rewarded when I do this. Whether or not this thing that I'm doing is in line with who I am or not, I now know that if I do this, I will get rewarded. And if I want to be rewarded, I will do this. If I do who I am, if I do what I am, and I don't get rewarded for it, well, then I push that aside because I want to get a reward. Now, there are times where I might do what I do and I get in trouble for it. And this is where real love and compassion have to come into parenting and living and understanding. Not that we're going to ever not damage or hurt a child. It's going to happen. It's like they're not going to live, nor should they live lives that are, so clean that they don't have anything to struggle. There's a book out there entitled We Are the Luckiest, and it refers to those of us who have drug and alcohol addiction in our past. Why? Because we are able to wake up to all of this. And children have to wake up to it as well. And that's not to say we want to purposely damage them. Like, they are going to be damaged just by accident, just as you were damaged by accident. I mean, some of you may have been damaged on purpose as well, but there are things that are in there that maybe you don't know about yet that were accidentally assumed by you. Just like the woman who couldn't watch her brother's execution. Like, yes, that could have been traumatic, but it could have been good for her as well. And the fact that she wasn't allowed to go put a thought in her head that she carried with her and now triggers her when she sees that thought come up. So I want everybody to understand that so much of what we're going to talk about today is about the idea that you have probably been living under the influence of your culture, your parents, your neighbors, and teachers and bosses and lovers and all sorts of people. And you may not even know where those things start and stop. And so that's really what we're going to be exploring today. Where does it start and stop for you? So thank you for attending the Recover Yourself workshop. I hope this is going to be very helpful for you. We all like to distract ourselves a little bit. And when we do that, we practice what I like to call awareness avoidance. We avoid being aware of the things that are hurting us. We avoid being aware of the things that we're trying to distract ourselves from. When we move to distraction, there's something there that's causing us to want to distract ourselves. And we're avoiding looking at that thing. The problem with wanting to practice awareness avoidance is that we are all inadvertently asking for something outside of ourselves to fill our lives with the exact thing that this awareness of this thing would bring. Right? If we were aware of our trust or security issues, we would face that and then give ourselves that trust and allow ourselves to feel that security that is within us and can only exist within us. Except when we avoid being aware that it's even a trust or security issue, we go out and we mistrust, or we see, or we feel like we can't trust, or people see us as being untrustworthy, or I need to get a security system for my house, or all sorts of things. And these 6 little trust, security, calm, abundance, they're just things. It's not like there is a myriad. Like I could probably come up with thousands of these. And later on in the actual workbook part of this workshop, we're going to be looking at these, and we're going to be calling these themes. So there's a theme in your life that you're trying to avoid being aware of. And it's really important for you to understand that every time you try to distract yourself, there's something that's causing it. And when you could ask yourself, well, what is causing me to want to avoid being aware at the moment? Well, maybe you won't find the answer for 6 months. Who knows? But asking the question at least puts you in the ballpark. Now, awareness avoidance is the core of everything that we're going to talk today. So when you ask yourself, we might not mention awareness avoidance a whole lot more as we move forward, but I want you to put this in, file this away, file awareness avoidance away as a question that you ask throughout the rest of the workshop. Now, this is all about you as an individual, right? Like, as we move on, we're going to start looking at your practice. We're start looking at the practice of the language that we use and how we start going through it. But at the end of every slide, I want you to come back. I want you to just remember awareness avoidance. How does that relate? And ultimately, awareness avoidance is the thing that we're talking about today. Because when you avoid being aware of where you're living under the influence, you're living under the influence of something. You may be living under the influence of a feeling of lack, which is why you have, or abundance, right? It's the same thing. Lack and abundance, like the two sides of the same coin. Confidence and I don't know what would be the opposite, like self-doubt. Like those are two sides of the same coin. So it's important to understand, like, where are we experiencing awareness avoidance, and how can we bring that to the fore so that we don't have to avoid being aware of these things that we are currently avoiding being aware of. So recall, throughout our workshop, this is a big topic. So if you take a Venn diagram and say awareness avoidance, you write that in the middle. Everything that we talk about is going to touch on awareness avoidance, whether it's something that is something that causes us to become aware, avoid being aware, or something that that points to the thing that we are avoiding being aware of. So my name is MartinJon, and I like to talk about recovering to. Recovering from is the most important part of recovery. So with your clients, recovering from is super important. The reason that recovering from is so important is because it leads us to clear thinking. I don't care how they get to a place of clear thinking. If recovering from means MAT, great. If recovering from means NDA, great. If recovering from means therapy, if recovering from means divorce or whatever. I don't know what recovering from is going to mean to each of your individual clients, but if they are living under the influence of something, they first have to recover from that. Now, maybe that takes a day, maybe it takes an afternoon, maybe it takes 6 years. Doesn't matter. If they're on a journey of recovering from, that is an important step in order to move to a place of what I like to call recovering to. So, however, to focus on what we're recovering from solely, we associate our recovery with the things that from which we are trying to separate. So if I had a 6-year cocaine habit, and then all of a sudden I want to quit using cocaine and I go into a 12-step program and my recovery is all about recovering from, well, my life is now all about not using cocaine. Well, that's all great, but before that, my life was all about using cocaine. So one of the biggest problems that we run into is that there's not a big shift. I look at recovering from as you put a pick in the ground, you grab a tethered rope tied to it, and then you count your days. I got a day, I got a week, I got a month, I got a year, I got 6 years, whatever, right? I got all this time. But all this time is being referenced to a point way back here. It is not referencing who I am today. So although I can celebrate, I got this much time, we're not reevaluating the point at which we stuck in that pick. So we stuck the pick in the ground, and now, okay, I'm recovering from, and I have all of this much time. What direction am I facing? I'm looking back. I'm looking back to that point. And actually, it instills a bit of fear. And so many people that are adamant about 12 step and 12 steps the only way, and you have to have abstinence and all of these things are not advocating those things out of love for their clients. They're advocating them out of fear, and fear probably for themselves more so than their clients. And I say that because if we look at harm reduction and we look at the birth and the breadth of harm reduction, we would see that the studies show that it doesn't work. Like just saying abstinence, it just doesn't work. And so we're often putting people in a position of having to live in fear when we constantly tell them you need to not use. Right? I know I left AA and recovering from groups because I wasn't going to live my life afraid of something. Right? I didn't want to live my life in fear of it coming back. I wanted to live my life in a space where I could live my life fully. Long-term recovery, as I understand it, is born out of understanding where we're recovering to. So that means maybe you don't have to drop the rope that's tethered to your sobriety date, but maybe you can turn around and look at where you're going and say, okay, this is the person I want to become. This is the thing that I want to do. This is the direction I want to go. And now, instead of judging where we are today by who we were 20 years ago, we can judge where we are today by who we want to be. As I mentioned when we started this workshop, I write down things I do in my day, and then I examine it as like, oh, well, here's something that I'm doing that I don't want to do tomorrow because that didn't help me be who I want to be. Now I can slowly examine, and that doesn't mean that I have to be judgmental about it, and just be curious about my actions. And I can ask myself, well, why did I do that? Why did I distract myself? And then I go through the process that we're going to go through today at the Recover Yourself workshop so that we can continue doing the process and the work of recovering ourselves. To recover yourself is work that we do to strengthen and expand our lives, and that's what we want to do. We want to strengthen and expand who we are. We want to be better people than we are today. We want to be better me's, right? Like me. I am unique and individual in every way, which is why it's so important for us to be able to have conversations. Because if I use a word and you don't agree with that word, well, then we're talking semantics. We got to get beyond that so that we don't get ourselves confused as to what we're trying to accomplish. One of the things that I like to say is I can't let words get in the way of a good conversation. Because if I allow the word that you use to trip me up, well, then I'm not listening and I'm hanging on to a single word. I recently did an interview for my podcast, Recover Yourself, which we're going to look at, not this clip, but we're going to look at a clip from that next. But if I recently interviewed Ken Bain, who is the president of the Good Teachers Society, and I think that's the name of it. But he wrote a book entitled Super Courses, The Future of Teaching and Learning. And he talked about this as well. If I could remember what this was, I would be able to finish that statement, but I can't recall. So recovering ourselves launches lives that are self-guided, ceasing the obsessive search for answers outside of ourselves. How many coaches are out there? How many people are out there trying to give people answers? People love answers, right? Like if you had an answer, and that's what's great about like 12-step, they have the answer. Cease use. Once we get rid of that answer, things become unclear. We don't know exactly what's next. We don't know what to do if you're continuing to use heroin in spite of your heroin addiction or MAT or whatever, right? Like you're continuing to use. We want to be able to compartmentalize everything and say, when you do this, this will happen. And that's not the case for everybody. That usually it's probably not the case for any more than 12% of the population. And so when we can see ourselves and when we can grow, we are able to face it all. We're able to grow in that. So So yeah, this is a place where I would take questions. Once we can be aware that we have been living under the influence of something, we can be. Okay, so I just, for some reason, the Zoom shut down on me. But we are out here and still doing this. I want to share my screen. Okay, share it. All right, um, so once you're patient, once you can recognize something that you're living under the influence of and recognize that there are thoughts in your mind that are not yours, that's when we can start planting seeds for those who we are working with around recovering to. But I want you to recognize that recovering from is still the most important part of your client's journey, because without that, they're not going to be thinking clearly. And we need them to think clearly in order to get to a place where they can recover to. Because if their thinking is happening because of their ego, or if they're like like the bad ego, not the good ego stuff. If they're thinking, I need to be important, I need to be heard. Uh, if they think I need to be heard and they don't feel like they're being heard, it's important to make sure that they can see, oh wait, maybe I'm being heard, but I'm seeing it as not being heard, right? Like I'm perceiving it in a way. Like that's clear thinking. It's clearly people can hear you. Now it's just about how am I going to continue processing and moving forward. Once they understand that, once they get to a place where they can recognize that they might be perceiving things incorrectly, then we can start planting seeds about what it means to recover too. So as we move on, you're going to see what that means and how that works. So today we have, like, consciousness has grown over the last 50 years. The ideas that we had 50 years ago, they don't make any sense anymore, right? I have a crystal in my pocket. As a male figure, as someone who identifies as male and all of these sorts of things, 50 years ago, if I had a crystal in my pocket, I'd probably also be wearing a flowing gown and have long hair and be doing things that, people in the new age, if new age even existed then, were doing. But I don't associate with new age at all. But I do crystals, I do energy work, I do all of these things that 50 years ago were not done by people who identified as male and masculine. And so today there is a desire to connect with oneself on a deeper level. Memes and pop culture are increasing their messaging on this, and it is becoming more and more obvious that people want to connect in a deeper way. That desire forces us to add this conversation of what is it we're recovering to, because recovering from existed in that old model of proving and being something that was strong, and there's a lot of messaging around that in the rooms. So when we speak of recovering from, we are speaking of living without. Right? It is a place of stripping you down from something, of something. And while we speak of recovering to, we immediately start talking about what it is we begin to do to define our lives living within. Right? We start to define things as like, I'm recovering to who I am. I'm recovering to a place. Due to the nature of our consumer culture, however, many things outside of ourselves try and give us the sense of death while only offering us escape. And this is going to be a clip that I interviewed Ruby Warrington, who wrote the book Sober Curious, and she has a lot to say about And I couldn't say that any better, of course. Ruby has a really wonderful way with words. But when you go out into social media, when you look at Amazon, when you do all of these things that can offer you escape, it's really important to get to clarity. And it's really also, you want to take note of what of those things are you living under the influence of those things that you are turning to pacify. What are you living under the influence of? If we just look at the terms recover from and recover to, I mean, even like when we say from, there's a from and to, right? Like it's a downward motion and an upward motion. When we recover to something, we can actually feel just a little different than when we feel like when we say I'm recovering from, right? Like there's a pulling down. Consumer culture attacks discomfort, and all of the things that are out there are attacking our discomfort, and they're saying, hey, you don't have to feel uncomfortable. Here's a new beverage, whether it's a non-alcoholic beverage or whatever. I always say sobriety is just a beverage choice. It has nothing to do with what recovery is. Recovery is bigger than that. Recovery is more important than your beverage choices. So that is the state of how we're going to be proceeding forward. Does anyone have any questions? Of course, on YouTube, I'm not on YouTube at the moment, so I don't know. It's possible I can check. Let me see. We're not going to play that again. Okay. So I want to now start talking about pacifiers. So pacifiers are the things that we turn to when we're ready to avoid being aware of something, right? Like, so we talked about awareness avoidance. We're starting to see, why do we want to avoid being aware? Oh yeah, because we don't like what we're seeing. And then we turn to a pacifier. Drugs and alcohol, of course, top the list. And they're the ones that society hates the most. Society doesn't want you to have a drug or alcohol problem because they want to do their drugs and alcohol without you having a problem. Television in another place. When I was a kid sitting in front of the television, I counted hours, like kids are sitting in front of the television 5 hours a day. That didn't mean anything to me as a kid. Today, I'm like, wow, 5 hours, it's a lot of time. What are you avoiding doing or being or sitting within yourself when you utilize that much time? Caffeine is on this list. And I always like to ask at this moment, how many of you chose to drink coffee today? I usually get everybody or most people raising their hand saying, yes, I chose to drink coffee today. And then I say, actually, how many of you actually chose to drink coffee today or just executed a decision that you made a long time ago to drink coffee in the morning? Most people. I don't know that anybody actually, some people have doubled down and said, yes, I made the choice. And then I said, did you have coffee prepared yesterday? And they said, yes. And I was like, well, then you didn't make the choice. You made the choice yesterday. You didn't make the choice today. And there's a big difference there, because who you were yesterday may very well not be who you are today. And if you're not that person today, then you are executing decisions that person made. And it's real important to start becoming aware of where we're actually making choices and where we're not. Social media is a place that we can get caught up as a pacifier, of course. Many people, whether you utilize it to distract yourself as doom scrolling, as they call it, or whether you utilize it as a place to get reinforcement and get praise. Or it may even be a place where you get to reinforce your ideas of not being heard. Social media is a great drug for many, many different things. Emotional loops. Some people get angry and they can't get out of it. They're just in an angry state. And when they start to get out of it, they start the story again so they can get angry again, so they can feel again. And that's a big deal. When you start to recognize where it is you're applying these short-term solutions to feel comfortable. It's all right to feel uncomfortable. The society and culture and our consumer culture want you to not feel uncomfortable because they know you don't feel comfortable. But feeling uncomfortable is normal. And we just need to be able to sit in that so we can be ourselves. The more, there is an opponent process that we talk about in the drug and alcohol world. And the opponent process is when you do something to make yourself feel anything, right? If you do something to make yourself feel fearful, if you do something to make yourself feel comfortable, or to make yourself feel less anxiety, that thing that you do puts weight on a scale, and that scale comes down. Well, your brain and the emotional, like chemical aspects of your brain, tries to get that back even. So it pushes down on this side to try and level things off. Well, eventually, all of the stimulus of the social media, of the drugs, the alcohol, the caffeine, and everything jumps off the scale. And what happens is the scale clicks to the other direction. And everything that you wanted to avoid with those drugs of choice, whatever, those pacifiers, clicks down to the other side. And then you have this opponent process. You have the opposite. Right? When you are constantly on social media feeling like you're with people, well, it's possible that the other side of that is you feel lonely. So when you put your social media down, you start to feel a little lonely. And maybe you can get over that really easily. But if you're constantly, like every time you feel lonely, you put those gremlins on the other side and you go to social media, the more you do that, when you utilize that pacifier, the more you're actually contributing to your own feelings of loneliness in the long run. Because when you put social media down, you're going to feel lonely. Shopping and gaming or other pacifiers we use. Many people use work. Well, I want to avoid stuff, so I'm going to go to work so I don't have to think about myself. Eating. Clutter and cleaning. I mean, all of us know somebody who cleans every time they get upset, right? Every time something goes wrong, they're cleaning, and their house is spick and span, and they're still cleaning. Sex and relationships. People get into sex and relationships just so they can avoid feeling lonely or feeling like themselves. They can do something for someone else so that can bring them joy. Multitasking is another thing. We know it doesn't work, but we do it and we pride ourselves on it, and we walk around and say, oh, I can do all of these things. Well, why do you want to do all of those things? You ask that question because it's real important to be fully honest with yourself and say, well, I'm multitasking so I can avoid something. Well, if you can see that and you can and you can recognize that, well, then you can address it. And you can say, well, my identity of being a multitasker doesn't have to trump the reality of who I am. Maybe I am more important than my identity of being a multitasker. And then I can examine, well, why am I multitasking? What does this mean? What does it look like? Okay, usually I'd be asking you guys if you have any questions, if you want to comment, if you have, that would have been a poll that you would have answered so that I could have, been in touch with what it is you guys are using as pacifiers. Pacifiers are huge, and it's real important that we know where they're coming from and why they exist. So remember the caffeine thing I mentioned earlier? That's a very much of space where we're not showing up. We're not being aware of the choices that we're making. Every day we do have to step away from one thing or another, and although this is normal, are we taking the time to take note of the things we want to step away from and what we are doing when we do step away from them? This is huge because if you get angry all the time. Going through the motions of getting angry is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with going through the motions of getting angry. You can get angry, you can throw things, you can, like, however you get angry, you get angry. You've done it a myriad of times before. It's no big deal. What this workshop wants you to do upon completing it is you get angry. That's fine. When you're done being angry, you ask that question, why did I get angry? Why did I step away from who I was for that emotional loop? It's about examining the cause of your having done that. Most of us get angry and then we forgive. We get angry and then we forgive, as if forgiving another person or forgiving ourselves really means it. What we want to do is learn. Whether or not you can forgive a person, it's still your job to learn. And it's your job to learn why you're getting triggered so that you don't have to get triggered in the future. My guess is most of you get angry about the same topics all the time. And the thing is you're not learning. Even if you don't get angry, but get triggered in any way, even if I also see being happy as being a trigger. And we are going to talk about triggers. We're going to talk about triggers in depth today. Not on this first hour, but it is really important that you understand that triggers are an important aspect to understanding who you are and recovering yourself. Remember all that awareness talk we were talking about? I hope you guys have been thinking about it, because awareness is noticing where we check out or where we're choosing not to engage or help ourselves recover or help us recover ourselves. You see, that awareness, that us avoiding being aware of why we're getting angry, us avoiding being aware of why we're being triggered or why we're extremely happy or whatever. Like maybe we say, we're extremely happy because this thing happened. Yes. Why is it that this thing happening causes me to be happy? Right? Because this thing happening isn't going to cause everybody to be happy. Some people might be upset if this thing happens that caused you to be happy. So why, what part of this is making you happy? Is it security? Is it calmness? Is it giving you a sense of abundance? What is it doing for you? Like, that's the awareness that we want. We want awareness that this thing made me happy. Yes, I'm happy about that. Well, because nothing is ubiquitously going to make people happy. Why does this thing, what about this thing is making you happy? That way you can see yourself. That way you can see and you can become aware of that which is in this and in you that's in alignment. Now, if it's something that makes you angry, why is this making me angry? And you could believe, well, if you did that to anybody, they'd be angry, but you'd be surprised. And not everybody gets angry the way you do. Not everybody gets angry at the things that you do. And if they do get angry, it very well may not be for the same reasons that you're getting angry. So it's important. And that's what we're talking about when we say awareness. It's knowing what's at the root, not knowing the fruit, as they might say in the Tao or something. So there's a gap between our conscious and subconscious minds, right? Our subconscious minds look at the root and get us angry or get us happy or make us feel something, while we associate with the fruit in our conscious mind. Our conscious mind looks at that action and says, yes, this makes me happy. Yes, this makes me angry. Yes, this makes me upset, whatever. So there's a gap between our conscious and subconscious minds. And what we want to do is respond. There's a gap between how we consciously respond and how we subconsciously make, and how our subconscious may coax us into responding. Let me say that again. There is a gap between how we consciously want to respond to a situation and how our subconscious may coax us into responding. So if we see something and we want to respond a certain way, well, our subconscious may be getting us angry about something, and then we respond in a different way. It's really, this is at the core of all of our perceptions. And what I like to say is, under the most favorable circumstances, what responses would you endorse? So let's say someone wants to go to a party. Do you care? No. Let's say it's your daughter and she's wearing clothes that are revealing. And all of a sudden you have a different response, right? Your response is different because the situation has slightly shifted. Right? The situation went from a girl wants to go to a party wearing a miniskirt. Oh, whatever. That happens all the time. Now it's my daughter. Well, now my response is going to be very different, possibly, than it would be. And there's only a tiny, tiny shift. And that tiny shift is who the person is. And I say it's tiny. You may feel like it's a big deal, but there are billions of women in the world, and you just chalked them all up to be, whatever, to my daughter. So it's just the shift of 1 in 1 billionth of a shift that could happen, and you immediately like changed your perception of the situation. And that's the thing, like that subconscious fear, those subconscious feelings are affecting the way you're reacting and are affecting the things that you do and what you say. And that's a big, big shift to go from, of course they do, everyone does, to, oh my God, no, possibly. I mean, I don't know what your response would be under those circumstances, obviously. But we want to close that gap. And in order to close that gap, we have to become aware of what's happening around us that points back to us. Right? The fact that it's my daughter is pointing back to us, because now there is ownership over that. There's a feeling of ownership. There's a feeling of fear. There's a feeling of protectiveness. But that doesn't, your daughter isn't your property. And that's something that you will have to ultimately understand in this scenario, that your daughter is just another girl, is just another woman. And what are the assumptions that you're making when you see this and when you play it out in your mind? Because those aren't the assumptions that she's making, because those aren't the fears that she has. But you are going to insist that she live under the influence of your fears, possibly. That's a big deal. It's a big difference there. I like to say, if there's anything in the world that you don't like, there's something about you that you don't like. And when you can get in touch with that and give that a little love, give it a little attention, you can grow quite a bit. I'm going to check my time really quick. Yep, we're right on time. Okay, now we're talking baseline living. For those of you who are professionals, other people, you might just want to mull over some of the things that I talked about, but this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Even those that are laymen probably know what this is. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We have to recognize that when we become, when we are in a physical and even low in love and belonging stages in large swaths of our life, because maybe you're contributing in one aspect of your life, but you're in physical danger in other aspects of your life. So I mean, it's possible this isn't just like, oh, I'm going up the pyramid, and there's just one direction to go. It doesn't work that way. But just suffice it to say, if your clients are struggling to get clean water, food, place to live, security of any sort, well, they're not in a position to talk about how their triggers are affecting them, right? If you're bringing up recovering to anybody in this state, you are not being respectful of the state that they're in. Of course, physical things need to be dealt with first, and maybe you can start seeing where they're creating the situation that they're in. But bringing that up is not going to be very responsible. And so I always say they have to be secure in their belonging. And the reason that is because when they belong, they can step back and get curious. Because they belong, because there's some security physically, because there are other people that they feel are loving them. And so they feel supported. When you question what people think, when they don't have physical needs met, when they don't feel loved, they feel left out. And they feel scared. So this isn't a conversation to even be thinking about planting too many seeds when someone is coming in without a home. But as you gather information about this person, as you hear them, as you listen to them, you will be able to just get them to a place of curiosity so that they can start seeing that, you know what, they are living under the influence. They're currently living under the influence of not having the physical needs met, their physical needs met. And if they don't have their physical needs met, of course they're living under the influence of that. Now, how do we get you to not live under the influence of that? We got to get your physical needs met, right? Because those are physical needs. Those are needs. It's not relationship stuff. It's not complicated. You need water. Let's get you water. Period. Once that's done, we can start having other conversations. And this is harm reduction. You don't want to put someone in a position where like they have to deal with their food and having to deal with how they perceive the lack of food in their life. You can't do that, right? Like you have to move forward with integrity and love those clients that you are seeing. So this is going to be the end of our time on YouTube. This is going to be the end of the first hour of our talk. I want to thank you for joining me. My name is MartinJon. I am the Recovery Mentor, and I am here to help you recover yourself. And every step of the way, everything that I talk about in my podcast, in my writing, in my contributions, is all about you getting in touch with who you are, getting in touch with what you know deep inside yourself, because you know more about who you are than anybody else. I don't have your answers. You do. And I want to help you find those for yourself. We're all cartographers of our own lives. And if we don't draw that coastline, we're going to have to navigate it again, blindfolded, as we were before. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me for this first half of the Recover Yourself workshop. For those of you interested in going through a full workshop, I will put I'll put a link in the description, or you can check out any of my other videos, especially my Recover Yourself videos from the podcast. And you'll find links to everything that I'm doing and all of the work that I'm doing to help in this manner. I am here to help caregivers of all sorts, whether you're a parent, whether you're a child taking care of a parent, whether you are a manager at a company, whether you are a professional caregiver, counselor, clinician, therapist, doctor, nurse. I want to help you recover yourself so that you can help them recover themselves. Until next time, keep recovering yourself.